Welcome back to our Philippine Independence Show. I'm Rosal Romanes, your co-host for the show. Janela Carrera brought you some Philippine history before the Spanish arrived. So now I will talk about Spanish rule in the Philippines spanning 3 centuries. The Philippines, rich in culture, known for their traditional wares such as the Barong Tagalog and the Maria Clara, their classic Filipino dishes like kare-kare, sinigang, tinola, and don't forget the many languages from the different regions. Did you know that the Spanish, the Americans, and the Japanese occupied the Philippine Islands? The Filipinos maintained a sense of Filipineness, but of course with the influence of some of the other cultures. It all started with Ferdinand Magellan, the first European to reach the islands. Magellan was a Portuguese in the service of the Spanish crown who was looking for a westward route to the Spanish islands of Indonesia, but was sidetracked when he reached the Philippines and ended up ultimately introducing Christianity to the Filipinos. On March 16, 1521, Magellan's expedition landed on Homonhon Island. There, he was met by Chief of Cebu, Raja Humabon, who was friendly with Magellan and became the first native chief to embrace Christianity as a religion. Humabon ordered nearby chiefs to provide food supplies for the ships and convert to Christianity. However, one of the 2 chiefs within the island of Mactan, Datu Lapu-Lapu, refused. On April 17, 1521, Magellan sailed to Mactan and was killed in battle by natives led by Lapu-Lapu. Here's a little fun fact. The Philippines regards Lapu-Lapu as the first Filipino hero because he was the first native to resist Spanish colonization. Monuments of Lapu-Lapu had been built in Manila and Cebu, while the Philippine National Police and the Bureau of Fire Protection used his image in his honor. Out of the 5 ships and more than 300 men who left on the Magellan expedition in 1519, only 1 ship, the Victoria, and 18 men returned to Spain. Spain continued to send expeditions to the island, and on the 4th expedition, Commander Ruy Lopez de Villalobos named the islands Philippines after Prince Philip, who was later known as King Philip II, heir to the Spanish throne. After the Spaniards succeeded in 1556 to break the last good organized resistance, a long period of Spanish influence followed. In 1565, King Philip II appointed Miguel Lopez de Legazpi as the first Governor-General of the Philippines. Legazpi chose Manila to be its capital because of its natural harbor. But because of abuses and suppression of the Spaniards, a propaganda movement emerged with the aims for equality between Filipinos and Spaniards. In the late 19th century, Filipino intellectuals and the middle class began calling for independence. In 1892, the Katipunan, a secret revolutionary society, was formed in Manila. Membership grew dramatically. That's also around the time Filipino nationalist, novelist, poet, ophthalmologist, journalist, and revolutionary Dr. Jose Rizal earned his title of the National Hero of the Philippines because of his publications that advocated for equal treatment of Filipinos during Spanish rule. After his 1896 execution, he became an icon for the nationalist movement and gave fresh momentum to Filipino rebels to fight against Spain. Fun facts about Rizal. Rizal was considered a genius. Having traveled extensively in Europe, America, and Asia, he mastered 22 languages: Chinese, French, Portuguese, Greek, Russian, to name a few. He was also a cartoonist. Rizal was called the father of Philippine comics because of some humorous illustrations he made in Germany. This drawing is called The Baptism of Two Brothers and was made by Rizal to entertain the children of his landlord. The original copy is now preserved in the National Library of the Philippines. Rizal was also rumored to be a romantic. In fact, he wrote a love letter in invisible ink to Leonor Valenzuela. The message could only be deciphered if you put the letter over a lamp or candle. Smart, huh? Leonor was one of Rizal's first sweethearts. Unfortunately, they parted ways when Rizal had to leave for Spain. It is March 1897. Revolts broke out across Luzon. 28-year-old Emilio Aguinaldo became leader of the rebellion. By late 1897, the revolutionaries had been driven into the hills southeast of Manila, and Aguinaldo negotiated an agreement with the Spanish. In exchange for financial compensation and a promise of reform in the Philippines, Aguinaldo and his generals would accept exile in Hong Kong. The rebel leaders departed and the Philippine Revolution temporarily was at an end. A helping hand came a few years later from the Americans. At the end of the 19th century, on April 25, 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. The American Navy decided to attack the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay, and on May 1st, in 1898, the Spanish fleet was destroyed. June 12, 1898 is a date to remember because it was when independence was proclaimed for the Philippines after 300 years of Spanish rule. Though the Philippines was not truly independent until years later, Filipinos recognize and celebrate that day because it was a big victory, and that was also the day the national flag and the national anthem, Lupang Hinirang, were established. Fun facts about the Philippine flag. The Philippine flag holds the distinction of being one of the most unique in the world. What makes it so different is that one can know whether the country is in a state of war by the way the flag is flown. If the dominant color flown on top is red, that means the country is at war. Likewise, if it is blue, then the country is at peace. The idea for the modern Philippine flag design came in 1897 from General Emilio Aguinaldo, the de facto leader of the insurrection against the Spanish and the first president of the First Philippine Republic. Aguinaldo had signed a truce with the Spanish and underwent a self-imposed exile in Hong Kong. He presented the design to Marcela Agoncillo, her daughter Lorenza, and a young girl named Delfina de Natividad, who also happened to be the niece of national hero Dr. Jose Rizal. Together, the three sewed the flag, which was first flown on May 28, 1898, when Aguinaldo returned to the country to resume hostilities against the Spanish. Originally, the sun in the flag had a face, but this was scrapped in subsequent designs. The red and blue colors of the flag are rife with symbolism. Some historians have argued that the colors were influenced by the Cuban flag, where the people were also revolting against the Spanish, while others have asserted that the colors paid homage to the Americans who assisted in ending Spanish rule. After the end of the American-Spanish War, the Spaniards sold the Philippines for $20 million to the Americans. Aguinaldo didn't want to accept American rule and proclaimed the First Philippine Republic. Aguinaldo formally launched a new revolt, this time against the United States. The rebels, consistently defeated in the open field, turned to guerrilla warfare, and the U.S. Congress authorized the deployment of 60,000 troops to subdue them. By the end of 1899, there were 65,000 U.S. troops in the Philippines, but the war dragged on. So there you go, a refresher course into Philippine history, both before the Spanish occupation, during the Spanish occupation, and the Filipinos' fight for freedom. Our language and culture are rich in history, and the influences are explained in this intense history. It tells us why our language bears some similarities to Spanish, such as our numbers, dates, and time, or our dishes like adobo menudo and champorado. Coming up next, Janella and I will talk about the Philippines after the end of the Spanish rule. Stick around, there are some surprising things you'll want to hear about.